My situation was now indeed terrible, for my enemies had hemmed me in on every side. Behind came the quickening roll of the oars, as though my pursuers knew that the end was close. Around me on every side was desolation. There was not a roof or light, as far as I could see. Far off to the right rose some dark mass, but what it was I knew not. For a moment I paused to think what I should do, not for more, for my pursuers were drawing closer. Then my mind was made up. I slipped down the bank and took to the water. I struck out straight ahead, so as to gain the current by clearing the backwater of the island, for such I presume it was, when I had passed into the stream. I waited till a cloud came, driving across the moon and leaving all in darkness. Then I took off my hat and laid it softly on the water, floating with the stream, and a second after dived to the right and struck out under water with all my might. I was, I suppose, half a minute under water, and when I rose, came up as softly as I could, and turning, looked back. There went my light brown hat floating merrily away. Close behind it came a rickety old boat, driven furiously by a pair of oars. The moon was still partly obscured by the drifting clouds, but in the partial light I could see a man in the bows, holding aloft, ready to strike, what appeared to me to be that same dreadful pole-axe which I had before escaped. As I looked, the boat drew closer, closer, and the man struck savagely. The hat disappeared. The man fell forward, almost out of the boat. His comrades dragged him in, but without the axe, and then, as I turned, with all my energies bent on reaching the further bank, I heard the fierce whir of the muttered "Sacre!" which marked the anger of my baffled pursuers. That was the first sound I had heard from human lips during all this dreadful chase, and full as it was of menace and danger to me, it was a welcome sound, for it broke that awful silence which shrouded and appalled me. It was as though an overt sign that my opponents were men and not ghosts, and that with them I had, at least, the chance of a man, though but one against many. But now that the spell of silence was broken, the sounds came thick and fast. From boat to shore, and back from shore to boat, came quick question and answer, all in the fiercest whispers. I looked back, a fatal thing to do, for in the instant someone caught sight of my face, which showed white on the dark water, and shouted. Hands pointed to me, and in a moment or two the boat was under way, and following hard after me. I had but a little way to go, but quicker and quicker came the boat after me. A few more strokes, and I would be on the shore, but I felt the oncoming of the boat, and expected every second to feel the crash of an oar or other weapon on my head. Had I not seen that dreadful axe disappear in the water, I do not think I could have won the shore. I heard the muttered curses of those not rowing, and the laboured breath of the rowers. With one supreme effort for life or liberty, I touched the bank and sprang up it. There was not a single second to spare, for hard behind me the boat grounded and several dark forms sprang after me. I gained the top of the dyke, and keeping to the left ran on again. The boat put off and followed down the stream. Seeing this, I feared danger in this direction, and quickly turning, ran down the dyke on the other side, and after passing a short stretch of marshy ground, gained a wild, open, flat country, and sped on. Still behind me came my relentless pursuers. Far away, below me, I saw the same dark mass as before, but now grown closer and greater. My heart gave a great thrill of delight, for I knew it must be the fortress of Bicêtre, and with my new courage I ran on. I had heard that between each and all the protecting forts of Paris there are strategic ways, deep-sunk roads where soldiers marching should be sheltered from an enemy. I knew that, if I could gain this road, I would be safe, but in the darkness I could not see any sign of it, so, in blind hope of striking it, I ran on. Presently I came to the edge of a deep cut, and found that down below me ran a road guarded on each side by a ditch of water fenced on either side by a straight, high wall. Getting fainter and dizzier, I ran on. The ground got more broken, more and more still, till I staggered and fell, and rose again, and ran on in the blind anguish of the hunted. Again the thought of Alice nerved me. I would not be lost and wreck her life. I would fight and struggle for life to the bitter end. With a great effort I caught the top of the wall. As, scrambling like a catamount, I drew myself up, I actually felt a hand touch the sole of my foot. I was now on a sort of causeway, and before me I saw a dim light. Blind and dizzy, I ran on, staggered, and fell, rising, covered with dust and blood. "Halt là!" The word sounded like a voice from heaven. A blaze of light seemed to enwrap me, and I shouted with joy, "Que voilà!" The rattle of musketry, the flash of steel before my eyes. Instinctively I stopped, though close behind me came a rush of my pursuers. Another word or two, and out from a gateway poured, as it seemed to me, a tide of red and blue as the guard turned out. All round seemed blazing with light, and the flash of steel, the clink and rattle of arms, and loud, harsh voices of command. As I fell forward, utterly exhausted, a soldier caught me. I looked back in dreadful expectation, and saw the mass of dark forms disappearing into the night. Then I must have fainted. When I recovered my senses, I was in the guard-room. They gave me brandy, and after a while I was able to tell them something of what had passed. Then a commissary of police appeared, apparently out of the empty air, as is the way of the Parisian police officer. He listened attentively, and then had a moment's consultation with the officer in command. Apparently they were agreed, for they asked me if I were ready now to come with them. "Where to?" I asked, rising to go. "Back to the dust heaps. We shall perhaps catch them yet." "I shall try," said I. He eyed me for a moment keenly, and said suddenly, "Would you like to wait a while or till tomorrow, young Englishman?" This touched me to the quick, as perhaps he intended, and I jumped to my feet. "Come now," I said. "Now! Now! An Englishman is always ready for his duty." The commissary was a good fellow, as well as a shrewd one. He slapped my shoulder kindly. "Brave garçon," he said. "Forgive me, but I knew what would do you most good. The guard is ready. Come." And so, passing right through the guard-room, and through a long vaulted passage, we were out into the night. A few of the men in front had powerful lanterns. Through courtyards and down a sloping way we passed out through a low archway to a sunken road, the same that I had seen in my flight. The order was given to get at the double, and with a quick springing stride, half run, half walk, the soldiers went swiftly along. I felt my strength renewed again. Such is the difference between hunter and hunted. A very short distance took us to a low-lying pontoon bridge across the stream, and evidently very little higher up than I had struck it. Some effort had evidently been made to damage it, for the ropes had all been cut, and one of the chains had been broken. I heard an officer say to the commissary, "We are just in time. A few more minutes, and they would have destroyed the bridge. Forward, quicker still!" And on we went. Again we reached a pontoon on the winding stream. As we came up, we heard the hollow boom of the metal drums as the effort to destroy the bridge was again renewed. A word of command was given, and several men raised their rifles. "Fire!" A volley rang out. There was a muffled cry, and the dark forms dispersed. But the evil was done, and we saw the far end of the pontoon swing into the stream. This was a serious delay, and it was nearly an hour before we had renewed ropes and restored the bridge sufficiently to allow us to cross. We renewed the chase. Quicker we went towards the dust heaps. After a time we came to a place that I knew. There were the remains of a fire. A few smouldering wood ashes still cast a red glow, but the bulk of the ashes were cold. I knew the side of the hut and the hill behind it up which I had rushed, and in the flickering glow the eyes of the rats still shone with a sort of phosphorescence. The commissary spoke a word to the officer, and he cried, "Halt!" The officers were ordered to spread around and watch, and then we commenced to examine the ruins. The commissary himself began to lift away the charred boards and rubbish. These the soldiers took and piled together. Presently he started back, then bent down and rising, beckoned me. "See," he said. It was a gruesome sight. There lay a skeleton, face downwards, a woman by the loins, an old woman by the coarse fibre of the bone. Between the ribs rose a long spike-like dagger made from a butcher's sharpening knife, its keen point buried in the spine. "You will observe," said the commissary to the officer, and to me, as he took out his notebook, "that the woman must have fallen on her dagger. The rats are many here. See their eyes glistening among that heap of bones. You will also notice," I shuddered as he placed his hand on the skeleton, "that but little time was lost by them, for the bones are scarcely cold." There was no other sign of anyone near, living or dead, and so, deploying again into line, the soldiers passed on. Presently we came to the hut made of the old wardrobe. We approached. In 5 of the 6 compartments was an old man sleeping so soundly that even the glare of the lanterns did not wake them. Old and grim and grizzled they looked, with their gaunt, wrinkled, bronzed faces and their white moustaches. The officer called out harshly and loudly a word of command, and in an instant each one of them was on his feet before us and standing at attention. "What do you do here?" "We sleep," was the answer. "Where are the other chiffoniers?" asked the commissary. "Gone to work." "And you?" "We are on guard." "Peste!" laughed the officer grimly, as he looked at the old men one after the other in the face and added with cool, deliberate cruelty, "Asleep on duty. Is this the manner of the old guard? No wonder then at Waterloo." By the gleam of the lantern I saw the grim old faces grow deadly pale, and almost shuddered at the look in the eyes of the old men as the laugh of the soldiers echoed the grim pleasantry of the officer. I felt in that moment that I was, in some measure, avenged. For a moment they looked as if they would throw themselves on the taunter, but years of their life had schooled them and they remained still. "You are but 5, said the commissary. "Where is the 6th? The answer came with a grim chuckle. "He is there," and the speaker pointed to the bottom of the wardrobe. "He died last night. You won't find much of him. The burial of the rats is quick." The commissary stooped and looked in. Then he turned to the officer and said calmly, "We may as well go back. No trace here now. Nothing to prove that man was the one wounded by your soldiers' bullets. Probably they murdered him to cover up the trace. See!" Again he stooped and placed his hands on the skeleton. "The rats work quickly, and there are many. These bones are warm." I shuddered, and so did many more of those around me. "Form!" said the officer, and so in marching order, with the lantern swinging in front and the manacled veterans in the midst, with steady tramp, we took ourselves out of the dust heaps and turned backward to the fortress of Bicêtre. My year of probation has long since ended, and Alice is my wife. But when I look back upon that trying 12-month, one of the most vivid incidents that memory recalls is that associated with my visit to the City of Dust.